In the vast expanse of space, the galaxy was quiet. For years, peace had reigned. The major powers of the galaxy, each proud of their might, operated within their own territories, mostly leaving each other alone. The galaxy had entered a time of calm, where the stars were a symbol of stability, not danger. But that silence was about to be shattered. Out of nowhere, a distress signal came through the galactic communication network. At first, no one took it seriously. Distress calls were common enough. They came from struggling colonies, often from smaller planets that needed aid. But this one was different. Its source was from a distant corner of the galaxy, a place far beyond the reach of known space. This area had been forgotten by most galactic civilizations, a place where nothing of importance had ever come from. The distress signal was faint but urgent. It cut through the silence like a knife, causing a stir throughout the galaxy. And there was something else, something strange in the tone. The message was not just a plea for help. It was an alarm, a warning that whatever had happened, the situation was far worse than anyone could have predicted. The signal was clear. Help was needed, and it was needed now. But who could be calling for help from such a distant, unknown place? As the distress call reached the powerful species that dominated the galaxy, a sense of confusion spread. No one had expected anything like this. Powerful empires, once secure in their control, now found themselves in a dilemma. Should they respond? Could they afford to? What if the source of the call was a trap? Or worse, what if helping meant inviting danger upon themselves? The leaders of these great empires gathered in secret meetings, discussing the unknown danger. Alien species who once dominated the galaxy debated fiercely. Some argued that it would be foolish to risk sending aid. They were safe where they were. The unknown could bring destruction. Others saw an opportunity for expansion, to step in and take control of the situation, but none of them had enough information to make a clear decision. Meanwhile, Earth, once a forgotten corner of the galaxy, found itself at the center of the storm. For years, Earth had been isolated. After a series of mysterious and long-forgotten events, humanity had been cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Earth had been dismissed as weak, insignificant. No one in the galaxy believed that Earth had anything left to offer. The Council of Species had long since abandoned the human race, considering them nothing more than a curiosity. But when the distress call came in, something unexpected happened. Earth, in all its forgotten glory, received the signal. The response from Earth was immediate. The leaders on Earth knew they could not turn their back on this call. The message from the stars, no matter how distant, was clear. Humanity had to act. Despite being considered powerless by the rest of the galaxy, the humans responded with resolve. The Council had thought Earth would be the last place to make a move. They had never expected the humans to rise to the occasion. Humanity's past was filled with struggles, but they had always found a way to survive. This time would be no different. Humanity's response was one of urgency. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't hesitate to mobilize their resources. Earth was forgotten by many, but the humans knew they still had a fight in them. As the galaxy's greatest powers debated, Earth prepared. But there was something deeper at work here, something none of them understood. The signal, while asking for help, was much more than that. It was a challenge, an invitation to something greater, something more dangerous. The urgency of the call was enough to spark a sense of dread in the hearts of the galaxy's most powerful species. They knew they were facing something they couldn't yet comprehend. The Council of Species watched as the humans moved. It was clear now that Earth was not as helpless as they had believed. Something larger was at play. But what? Who had sent the call, and why? Was it truly a plea for aid, or was there a hidden message within the call itself? No one knew for sure, but the feeling of something terrible lurking on the horizon became undeniable. The audience watching from the far reaches of the galaxy could feel the tension building. The quiet of space was now filled with uncertainty, and the weight of the unknown hung heavily in the air. Would the galaxy's greatest powers heed the distress signal? Or would they let fear keep them from acting? And what would humanity do when they arrived at the source of the signal? Would they become the galaxy's savior, or would they be its downfall? The first pieces of the puzzle were in place, but the full picture remained hidden. The sense of urgency and mystery only grew as Earth prepared for what was to come. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had a role to play, whether they liked it or not. As the galaxy's most powerful species debated their next move, Earth took action. The human race, once thought of as irrelevant, now found themselves in a position to act decisively. Their government, long isolated, moved swiftly. The distress signal had caused an unexpected stir among humanity's leaders. The danger they had once been content to ignore was now too real to dismiss. Back on Earth, an emergency meeting was convened. The world's remaining leaders and military commanders gathered in secret, preparing for the unknown. The quiet, still Earth was no longer just a forgotten colony. It had become a force to be reckoned with. The distress call had shaken Earth's leaders out of their complacency. Though humanity's military might have been diminished during their years of exile, they were not as weak as the galaxy thought. Earth still possessed technology that the rest of the galaxy believed was lost. The humans had developed their own methods of surviving in isolation, crafting technologies in secret. Now, they were prepared to face the unknown. The rest of the galaxy might underestimate them, but humanity was determined to prove that they were not the helpless species others believed them to be. While Earth's leaders scrambled to make their preparations, the other galactic species continued to deliberate. The more they discussed the unknown signal, the more uncertain they became. The message had been clear. The sender was in need of help, but it also carried an ominous undertone. The galaxy's greatest minds pondered, was this a trap? Was it a trick to lure them into a situation they couldn't control? But there was one thing that no one could ignore. The signal had come from a place that no one knew. It was a remote sector of the galaxy, far from any known space. No species had claimed ownership over that region, and it was believed to be uninhabited. That made the source of the call even more intriguing. Why would anyone send a distress signal from there? The galaxy's most feared species, the Zakiri, were among the first to respond to the signal, but they were hesitant. They had conquered countless civilizations, wiped out whole planets, but this was different. The Zakiri, known across the galaxy for their ruthlessness and military prowess, had never met anything they couldn't destroy. Their empire spanned several systems, and their warships were the most feared in all the galaxy. But now, for the first time, they found themselves unsure. The signal, which they initially assumed to be just another plea for aid, was much more than that. It seemed to be calling out to them, tempting them to approach with caution. The leader of the Zakiri, a towering and ruthless figure known as Warlord Xar, paced in his war room. His decision would shape the fate of his people, and yet he hesitated. He was used to decisive action, used to overwhelming his enemies with sheer power. But this was different. He could feel it in the air, the sense of an unseen danger. What was the true meaning behind the distress call? Why would someone in such a desolate, unknown sector of the galaxy ask for help? Xar's mind raced as he considered the possibilities. Was it a trap set by an enemy? Or was it something far more dangerous? He knew the galaxy's other species were debating whether to intervene, but his instincts told him that the signal wasn't just a plea for help. It was a challenge. And challenges were something the Zakiri did not shy away from. But this challenge was not one he understood, and that made him wary. Back on Earth, the situation was also growing more urgent. Earth's leaders had quickly realized that they could not afford to wait for the galaxy's approval. They could not rely on the Council's decision. They would have to take matters into their own hands. The distress call had been directed at them as much as anyone else, and they would answer it, no matter the cost. Humanity's response was swift. Earth had long since developed its own methods of dealing with crisis. Over the years, as Earth had been isolated, they had honed their skills, creating a network of advanced technology and military strategies hidden from the rest of the galaxy. While the rest of the galaxy debated, Earth's fleets mobilized. They had no time to waste. As the human fleet prepared to depart, the Council of Species received word of Earth's decision. Many of the galactic powers dismissed Earth's chances of success. They assumed that the humans would falter, that their outdated fleets and limited resources would fail them. But the humans, with their fierce determination, were ready to prove them wrong. The human fleet, small by galactic standards, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were built with technology designed for stealth and survival. Unlike the grand, imposing vessels of the galaxy's great empires, Earth's ships were compact, efficient, and most importantly, unpredictable. They were designed for combat, but also for survival. Earth had learned long ago how to fight when the odds were against them, and this mission would be no different. As the human fleet set out into the vast unknown, they were aware of the dangers ahead. The unknown region of space they were heading to was treacherous, filled with cosmic anomalies that could tear a ship apart. But humanity was prepared. They knew the risks, but they were not afraid. They had faced their worst fears before and had survived. The journey to the distress signal's origin was long and fraught with danger. As the human fleet neared the coordinates, they detected strange readings, anomalies in space that made the crew uneasy. There was something out there, something no one could identify. The signal had led them to a place where no one had ventured before. And now, it was clear that something was waiting for them. As the fleet approached the coordinates, the tension aboard the ships grew. The crew, seasoned in combat and strategy, could feel the weight of what they were about to face. Earth's fleet was no longer just responding to a distress call. They were about to uncover something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The mystery of the distress call deepened, and the crew of Earth's fleet braced for what lay ahead. The galaxy's most feared species had hesitated to act, and now humanity was stepping into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenge awaited them. The stakes had never been higher. As Earth's fleet continued its journey through the unknown reaches of space, a heavy silence hung over the ships. The crew, although highly trained and battle-hardened, couldn't shake the sense of unease that gnawed at them. The distress signal that had prompted their mission was still the only clue to what lay ahead, but the deeper they traveled into the uncharted sector, the more mysterious it became. The galaxy's most advanced scanners had detected no life in this part of the galaxy, and yet the signal persisted. Its origin point remained elusive, hidden behind strange cosmic anomalies that seemed to distort reality itself. The fleet's advanced technology struggled to make sense of the readings, their instruments blinking erratically as they passed through vast fields of cosmic debris and strange gravitational anomalies. Captain Elisa Stroud, leader of Earth's fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship, her sharp eyes scanning the view screen. The flickering stars beyond the ship's hull seemed distant, almost unreachable. Her crew moved silently, focused on their tasks. Each of them knew the mission they had undertaken was unlike any they had faced before. Yet it was clear to Captain Stroud that they were no longer just venturing into an unknown region. They were heading towards something far more dangerous. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," reported Lieutenant Ramos, his voice calm but tinged with apprehension. "We should be within range to receive clearer data from the signal in a few minutes." Elisa nodded, but her gut told her something wasn't right. The closer they got, the more the signal seemed to warp. It had started as a simple cry for help, but now it felt as if it was pulling them deeper into the unknown, leading them to a place no one was meant to find. She glanced at the holographic map, trying to make sense of it, but it didn't add up. There was no logic to the signal's origin, no known planets, no colonies, no civilization anywhere near it. Just emptiness. On the other side of the galaxy, the Zakiri had also been preparing for their own journey into this unknown sector. The mighty Zakiri fleet, vast and imposing, had finally decided to act. Warlord Xar, the feared leader of the Zakiri, had been uneasy, but the reputation of the Zakiri demanded that they investigate this disturbance. The Zakiri had never been known to shy away from danger. If the signal was indeed a trap, they would deal with it as they always had, with overwhelming force. But something gnawed at Ikstar's mind. For the first time in his life, he questioned his instincts. The Zakiri warships moved forward, their massive forms cutting through the void like predators on the hunt, each ship carrying a battle-hardened crew. Back on Earth's flagship, the tension was palpable. The crew had not yet spoken openly about their fears, but it was clear they all shared the same unspoken worry. What would they find when they reached the source of the signal? Was it truly a cry for help, or was it something far darker, a bait for something far more dangerous than anyone could comprehend? As they neared the signal's origin, a massive energy distortion appeared on the ship's sensors, and suddenly everything changed. The space around them seemed to bend. Reality itself was warping, twisting into something unrecognizable. The stars outside flickered, and a low hum filled the ship, vibrating through the very air. A shockwave of energy suddenly surged through space, sending a pulse that rattled the fleet. "Shields up," Captain Stroud shouted. "Brace for impact." The crew scrambled to secure the ship's defenses as the energy shockwaves continued to pulse through space. For a moment, it felt as if the entire fleet might be ripped apart by the invisible forces at work. The view screen flickered, and the ship's sensors could no longer keep up with the strange phenomena. Something was manipulating space itself, something powerful and ancient. Then, as quickly as the energy surge had come, it stopped. The space around the fleet became eerily still. Silence. An unnatural quiet settled over the fleet as Captain Stroud stared at the screen, her mind racing. Was this the threat they had been warned about? Had they walked straight into a trap, or had they stumbled upon something far older than anything the galaxy had ever encountered? Before she could issue further orders, a voice crackled over the comms, low and distorted. "Human fleet, you have arrived." The voice was unmistakably alien, yet it was unlike any language they had encountered before. The words were garbled, distorted, but the intent was clear. "You will not leave. You are too late." The voice cut off abruptly, and the hum returned, growing louder this time, reverberating through the entire fleet. It was a signal, a message, pulsing through the ship's communication systems. It wasn't a warning or an invitation. It was a challenge. Captain Stroud's heart pounded in her chest. This was no simple distress call. The unknown force that had lured them here had made its intentions clear. They were not meant to come this far. They were not supposed to find this place, this secret, hidden part of the galaxy. "Prepare for combat," Stroud ordered, her voice firm. The crew jumped into action, weapons being readied, shields reinforced, and the fleet positioning itself for whatever was to come. It was clear that humanity had stepped into a hornet's nest, a nest that was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The unknown force that had sent the distress call was not an ally in need of help. It was something far older, far more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever encountered. And now, Earth's fleet was trapped in its grasp. The only way out would be through a confrontation, one that would test every ounce of humanity's strength and resolve. As the fleet readied for battle, the crew braced themselves for the unknown. They had come to answer a call for help, but now they realized it had been a call to arms. The galaxy's greatest powers might have hesitated, but humanity was ready to prove that they were not to be underestimated. The final countdown had begun. The real battle for the galaxy's future was about to unfold. The eerie silence that followed the cryptic message seemed to stretch on forever. The crew of Earth's fleet, still in shock from the strange encounter, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Their scanners continued to malfunction, their readings skewed by the strange energy fluctuations that had enveloped the area. Every ship in the fleet had gone silent, and no one dared speak the words that lingered on the tip of their tongues. Were they already too late? Captain Elisa Stroud stood at the helm of the flagship, her hands gripping the command chair tightly as she stared at the view screen. The distorted stars outside flickered in and out of view, as if they were no longer part of the same universe. She could feel the weight of every single pair of eyes behind her, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Despite the mounting pressure, her mind remained clear. The strange energy surge, the distorted signal, and the chilling words of the mysterious voice all pointed to one thing. They weren't just dealing with a new enemy. They were facing something ancient, something that defied all their understanding of the galaxy. "Captain, I've isolated the signal," Lieutenant Ramos said, his voice strained but focused. He turned to face Stroud, his face pale. "It's coming from a nearby region, but the readings are impossible. We're talking about an artificial construct, something far beyond anything in our database." Stroud's eyes narrowed. She had known they were stepping into unknown territory, but this was something else entirely. Something far beyond human comprehension. "Is it another fleet?" she asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at her. "No, Captain. It's not a fleet. It's like a living structure. A massive, moving entity hidden beneath the cosmic anomalies," Ramos replied, his voice laced with fear. "Whatever it is, it's cloaked, shielded in ways we've never seen before. It's been here, hiding in plain sight, waiting." The realization hit Stroud like a ton of bricks. They weren't just facing a mysterious alien force. They were dealing with something that had been here long before any of them arrived. Something ancient. And now, it was awake. Stroud clenched her fists. There was no backing down now. Earth's fleet had already crossed the point of no return. They had come to answer a call for help, and now they were caught in the grip of something far darker, far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. "Prepare all ships for combat," Stroud ordered, her voice resolute. "And get ready for anything. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to protect the galaxy from something that's been hiding in the shadows for far too long." As the fleet moved forward, the hum of the engines was the only sound to fill the tense silence. Stroud's mind raced. The unknown enemy wasn't just an isolated force. They were part of something much larger, a long-forgotten chapter in the galaxy's history that was about to be rewritten. Whatever had sent the distress call was merely the beginning. The real danger lay in the ancient power that had been waiting for them. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Zakiri fleet, under the command of Warlord Xar, was closing in on the same mysterious region. The Zakiri, known for their ruthless efficiency and unmatched power, had always prided themselves on their ability to crush any threat that dared challenge them. But this situation was different. The Zakiri had never encountered a force like this before. Their scouts had reported strange energy readings in the area, and whispers of an ancient power had begun circulating through their ranks. The Zakiri were prepared to destroy any threat, but even they could sense that something was wrong. Xer stood at the bridge of his flagship, his expression grim. His once unshakable confidence was now tempered by the strange energy readings and the unsettling silence that stretched across the region. He knew better than to trust his instincts in a situation like this. The Zakiri had fought and conquered countless species, but this was something different, something that could change the course of their destiny. "Activate the cloaking systems," Sarah commanded. "I want full scans of the area. We will not make the same mistake as the humans. Whatever we're dealing with, we will strike first." Back on Earth's fleet, the tension continued to mount. As they neared the source of the mysterious signal, the crew began to notice strange phenomena. Shifts in the gravitational field, small ripples in space-time, and flickers of light that danced across the void. The farther they traveled, the more distorted the space around them became. The lines between reality and illusion seemed to blur. Suddenly, the fleet's sensors began to pick up something moving at incredible speeds. It was too fast, too erratic for anything human-made. The ships couldn't keep up with the object, which appeared to be darting in and out of the distorted space. "Captain, there's something out there. It's moving too fast," shouted Lieutenant Ramos. His voice was filled with urgency. It's coming straight for us." The crew scrambled, the once calm atmosphere erupting into a frenzy. Stroud's eyes widened as she saw the massive shape materialize on the view screen. It was massive, larger than any ship they had ever seen. But it wasn't a ship at all. It was alive, or something that resembled life. The structure moved as though it were part of the fabric of space itself, a massive, organic construct pulsing with strange, dark energy. The thing was not merely a ship. It was a living entity, one that was far older than anything in the galaxy. For a moment, everything stopped. The fleet's weapons powered up, the shields went into full defense mode, and every crew member stood frozen, staring at the approaching force. Stroud's breath caught in her throat. She knew they were outmatched. The entity they were facing was not just a weapon. It was a living nightmare, an ancient entity of unimaginable power that had been hidden for millennia. And it was here, now, ready to consume them all. "Prepare for impact," Stroud shouted, but the fear in her voice was hard to hide. There was no escape. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and humanity's survival was no longer guaranteed. The massive entity loomed ahead, a shadow in the stars that seemed to devour the very light around it. The crew of Earth's fleet braced for what was to come. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology hummed with the promise of a desperate fight. But despite their preparations, one thing was clear. They were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Captain Elisa Stroud stood at the command center of her flagship, her eyes locked on the monstrous structure that loomed in the distance. The creature, if it could even be called that, was no mere ship. It was an ancient force, a dark energy that moved through space like a storm, warping reality itself. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. The fate of the galaxy and humanity itself rested on the next few minutes. "Deploy all units," Stroud ordered, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "Target the entity's weak points and fire at will. We may not get another chance." The fleet, now in full battle formation, moved toward the entity. As they did, the massive structure seemed to respond, shifting and pulsing with dark energy. Lightning-like arcs of energy crackled from its surface, disorienting the human ships as they closed in. Each blast of energy from the enemy sent shockwaves through space, rattling the fleet's hulls. But they pushed on. Captain Stroud's mind raced. She knew that their traditional weapons would not be enough. The enemy was too powerful, too unpredictable. They needed to outsmart it. They needed to adapt. "Lieutenant Ramos, can you pinpoint any vulnerabilities?" Stroud asked, her eyes never leaving the screen. Ramos was at his console, hands flying over the controls. His face was grim, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm trying, Captain, but the energy readings are all over the place. Nothing we've ever encountered matches this." A series of loud beeps interrupted them. Another ship, a smaller fighter, had taken a direct hit. The crew gasped as it exploded into a fireball, fragments of metal scattering into space. The loss hit hard, but there was no time to mourn. They were still in the fight. "Stay focused," Stroud barked, rallying her crew. "We are not going to lose today. Humanity is not going to be erased." As if on cue, the mysterious entity began to fire back, sending pulses of dark energy toward Earth's fleet. Stroud's ship rocked with each hit, alarms blaring in the background. The shields flickered, but they held, barely. Suddenly, a message came through on the command channel, an unexpected signal that sliced through the chaos. It was not a distress call, nor was it an order. It was a voice Stroud would never forget. "This is the Zakiri," the voice boomed, cold and unyielding. "We have arrived." The Zakiri, the galaxy's most feared species, had arrived, drawn by the same energy that had brought humanity here. Stroud's heart sank. The Zakiri, with their brutal war machines and unmatched power, were joining the fight. But then something even stranger happened. The entity's energy surged, and the Zakiri fleet faltered. They weren't immune to the creature's dark power. In fact, the energy seemed to be reacting to the presence of the Zakiri, swirling and shifting in ways that were impossible to predict. It was as if the entity knew the Zakiri were a threat, and it was reacting accordingly. "This is it," Stroud whispered, her voice tight with realization. "The creature is using the Zakiri as bait to draw us in. It's controlling everything." But she had no choice. They couldn't pull back now. Earth's fleet had to push forward. They were humanity's last hope. "All ships target the center of the entity. It has to have a core," Stroud ordered, determination filling her voice. "We will either destroy it, or we will die trying." The final assault began. The entire fleet concentrated their fire on the center of the entity, hoping to find the core that controlled its unnatural power. But the more they fired, the more the creature seemed to adapt. It shifted, distorted, and retaliated with a force that seemed to crush the very fabric of space. But then, as if on instinct, Strode knew what had to be done. There was one last card to play, a risky maneuver that had never been attempted before. She turned to Lieutenant Ramos, who was already aware of what she was thinking. "Captain," Ramos said, his voice filled with dread, "are you sure? If we do this, we may never make it out alive." Stroud nodded without hesitation. "Do it, for humanity." Ramos made the final adjustments. The flagship's engines hummed louder, and the ship lurched forward into the heart of the battle. In one final, explosive effort, the flagship dove directly into the entity's core, using its own power to unleash a massive directed shockwave that would hopefully destroy the creature from within. For a moment, there was complete silence in the void of space. The fleet held its breath, unsure if they had succeeded. Then, with a deafening roar, the entity began to disintegrate. The shockwave triggered a massive explosion, lighting up the stars themselves, as the mysterious force shattered into fragments, vanishing into the void. The Zakiri fleet, stunned by the unexpected outcome, quickly retreated. The remaining forces of Earth's fleet stood victorious, but at a great cost. Many ships had been lost, and countless lives had been sacrificed. But humanity had once again proven that it could stand against the darkness of the galaxy. As Captain Stroud gazed out at the remnants of the battle, she felt a sense of pride. The galaxy would remember the humans, not as exiles, but as the protectors of the stars. And from this day forward, no force in the galaxy would ever underestimate humanity again.